Hello everyone, my name is Shelby and this is the series where I reveal what is inside these mystery pottery molds I found on Gumtree. Hello and welcome to Mould 76. I feel like it's been a while since we've done a really quirky, cool mold that's just got this real awesomeness about it. But here we are. I am really excited about this one. I'm really excited to see what you think of this one. This one had a larger hole on the top, which I poured up first, and then a smaller hole on the bottom. So I poured the first side up, let it tip out, and poured the other bit. And I open it to reveal this sweet cow milk jug. I cannot with this. It is so cute. We've got the tail as the handle and you pour the milk into the insides and then it comes out the mouth. So with this mold, I love it. I think this is so cool. So I start by cutting those ears off their little pouring spout so I can attach them later. And because this mold was so intricate with all the legs and the tail and the head and everything, it was a little bit tricky to get out. So what I did was I actually carved a bit of the pouring spout off before getting it out of the mold. Now, when I do this, I don't go all the way through the clay because I don't want to carve the plaster. I don't want to cut into that at all because the plaster is quite soft still. So I just go in a little bit of the way and then pull it away so I'm able to get the piece out of the mold. I then touch it up post getting it out by cutting off any extra excess, and then I'm attaching the little ears. So once the ears are on, I've also got to make the hole for the milk to be poured out. So it's got cut out in that mouth bubble there, and that would be in place just so that the mold would actually come out of the mold. They just pop that in so it doesn't get like caught and the little details don't crack. So that's why that cut out detail's there, and that's why it's not just automatically an open mouth already. So I cut that out and I get a little hole cutter and push that all the way through. This bit was actually a little bit tricky because I was trying not to get the wood part of the hole cutter indenting on the snout as well, but we got it all through and hopefully it works because it's a wet clay. I can't really test it with liquid yet until it's sort of been fired once at least. Before we get into the crux of the painting and the magic I'm going to put on these ones this week, I just wanted to put in a little flash warning for the content. Because we've now hit autumn, winter time, the sun likes to hide behind the gum trees, and when it does that, we get this light shining through the gums and a shadow that flickers across when I do the time lapse, which you can see here. So I just wanted to give you a pre-flash warning in case that is relevant to you, and just be mindful that that's going to happen in this video. It is very gentle, but I wanted to let you know anyway. So when I opened this mold, I instantly had to look it up. Some molds I'm like, I'm just going to interpret this the way I feel like I should do it and not be influenced by whatever it was intended for or whatever other designers have done with it. But this one, I really wanted to learn a bit more about where the milk jug as a cow originated from. And don't quote me on all of this. I've Googled it once and you guys could probably do way more research than me in this area. But I thought I'd fill you in on some of the stuff I read about this milk jug in particular, which actually influenced my artwork on it this week and influenced the inspiration that I took for the piece, because I was just going to do some plain cows, but then I ended up doing this really beautiful sort of floral work, which I'll explain the influence behind that. Cow milk jugs actually started as a trend in the 1700s, and that was because the Dutch silversmith John Shoop moved to London as an immigrant and created these cows with their tail as a handle, but the milk could go inside and pour out the mouth, very similar to this piece here from the mold, but also it had a lid with a fly on top, so it was a complete disguise at the tea party or a tea sitting. The rich went bananas for this. They thought it was so hilarious and so cool and such a quirky novelty thing that only they could afford. The popularity soared not just because of the novelty of it, but because it was what the rich and famous were sort of doing at the time. Once this popularity really formed, they started making reproductions in pottery and porcelain so the wider public could actually afford these really rare special pieces that only the rich could afford. Designs were more comical back then until the 19th century, when more realistic designs came to life, like this design that I'm working on today, where you've got more of the fur, it's got a more realistic face, everything seems a bit more proportioned. Before, it was sort of all a bit sort of hodgepodge, which I don't really blame them, because silversmithing is really hard, and to even make a cow out of silver is so freaking cool. I couldn't do it. I don't even think I could make one out of pottery this realistic, let alone one out of silver with the heat and the pressure. Oh, amazing. So something that started out for only the rich in London then spread so far and wide. Like, I'm sure we've all seen these before, and the reproductions in pottery so that it was more affordable it's like a traditional trend that we're still seeing in social behavior today, which is so interesting. Like, I find this piece so interesting just based on the history alone, let alone the shape and the beauty of it. The original cow creamers from Heaps that they sold back in the 1700s sell between 7,000 Australian dollars to 12,000 Australian dollars. That is so much money. And just before I keep talking about where the inspiration came from, I accidentally knocked the second piece that I was painting on the table and thought it was fine. It did sound like it cracked, but looking back at this footage, I can't believe I didn't see it. I cracked the tail. I just had a boo-boo, and it didn't crack all the way through, and it's still joined by that furry end of the tail, so I'm just going to bisfire it and hope for the best. The reason it didn't break is because it's already been bisfired. I'm just baking on the underglaze again. My inspiration stemmed from John Shute. Being originally from a Dutch background, I wanted to take inspiration from Dutch folk art and also give it a bit more of my spin on it, and I guess pay homage to the origins of this piece and where they originated from. So for that, I added some really bold, colourful flower designs that were inspired by the Dutch folk artwork. I was interested in doing a sort of Delft blue style, but I also was worried about the texture of these and how just like one colour would look. So that's why I went with a bold, flat colour rather than that Delft blue where you've got the variation of blue. But yeah, that was the inspiration behind it. I wasn't going to do that. I was just going to do original, like, looking cows, like with plain colors. And yeah, I decided to do the Dutch style just because of my research. So once this was done, I had to figure out how to glaze them, and I spilt the glaze everywhere. It was actually so hard trying to get glaze on the inside so it was nice and sealed for the milk, but also trying to glaze the outside with this awkward shape. And yeah, it was just a nightmare. Actually, it was really tricky. And you know how, like, when you leave the house and you're like, did I turn the iron off? I was thinking that with these pieces, and I was going, did I remember to do that thing? And I definitely forgot to clean out the pouring spouts in the mouth of glaze, because what can happen is it can build up in that surface area of the hole, which means the milk won't come out. So we're just going to pray that these actually pour milk now, because I forgot to clean the hole up. Alrighty, here we go, opening the kiln. I couldn't see in the mouths yet, but I did see that the crack of the tail where I banged it, it sort of didn't open up anymore. It stayed the same, and the glaze also worked like a bit of a glue, which I am so happy about because it's still somewhat usable. It wasn't a complete disaster. I was hoping that maybe I could put some glue in there or something. I don't know. I was just going to see what happened, really. Anyway, let's take a closer look. Here is the first colourful cow with Dutch folk art inspired motifs. This one has a sort of bird design with leafy details on its wings and some bright popping colours. I really do like this a lot. I think the pattern's quite bold, and despite the textured surface, the detail came out so nicely. It was actually, that was one thing that I was worried about, is the detail on it being hard to paint on, but it actually ended up working out quite well. This one, unfortunately, was the one I was worried about, and the hole is glazed up. So essentially what happens is, as it shrinks, the glaze has nowhere to go, and if it's already caked on that surface area, it's just gonna, have nowhere to go and seal it up. But still a cute planter. I think it's still a cute planter. The other issue I found with this piece is this was not the one that cracked, but after the firing, you can see a little hairline crack in the tail. So whether that was something to do with the joining, although I don't know, something to do with the mould maybe, but otherwise it still has a crack. So not sure whether it's a mould issue or a drying issue, but something I can figure out along the way. Here is the second colored cow. I actually love the bold blue flower, and I feel like this is what it could look like as a dove look, but this was the one with the cracked tail. It ended up sealing on the top, and you can see where my nails catching. It's not completely glazed over, which makes it a really fragile piece, and I probably wouldn't recommend handling it as a handle. I'd probably use this one as a planter as well. The hole works, it's open, it didn't glaze over, but yeah, I think even like with a cute little bouquet of flowers that match the colors, I think it would be really lovely as well. Who says we have to use it as a milk creamer? Next up, we've got our black and white cow. Now, I have one little regret about the two sort of normal traditional looking cows is I didn't paint their horns. The creamer hole is fine. It's actually smaller than the others, and I also noticed this discoloration near the tail. So I don't know what happened there. Anyway, my one regret is those little horns. I think I should have gone over them with like a fawny color just to make them pop a little bit. They sort of blend in a little bit too much. I was going for that sort of bone white, but I just reckon they needed just a soft torn color that would just make them not feel like they're part of the ear and a separate part, I guess. The rest of the tails on these two didn't crack, so maybe, I don't know, but the hole on this one is a lot bigger, and I'm mentioning that now because I'm going to test the creamers out and how they pour milk, and you'll see why I mention that, because it makes a difference. It actually makes a difference on how they tip out the milk. We're going to do a little trial with some actual milk because the consistency is a bit different to water. The first one I did was the black and white cow, and this is perfect. That is a perfect stream just for adding a little dribble to some tea. I think that that is a perfect stream. The issue I first found out about was the dribbling, because the snout is sort of doesn't really have like a cup to stop the dribble. It just goes everywhere. The brown one had a bigger hole which made it sort of dribble and gape around the mouth like this, and the other blue, well, the last one that has an active hole was also the same. It dribbled a lot. The stream was really thick. It wasn't slow and steady and gentle. The other thing I did notice was if you fill it up too much, you're going to have the issue of it tipping all over the head. So you want to be careful how much you actually put into the jug before you do it. So just a few little, like, at the end of the day, it's a novelty creamer, but just things to be aware of in the design that make it a little bit trickier, or maybe just a little bit of an inconvenience. But yeah, the dribbling really annoys me, but I would still absolutely use this because I think they're just great. I think they're just great despite the design facts. Like, I mean, how perfect can you really get a like realistic looking cow jug to functionally work absolutely 100%. I think maybe even just some slight modifications to the mouth would fix that dribbling issue, and also just being aware of how big the hole is would fix all those issues. Hey, I can't be too harsh. It was my first ever time making a cow-shaped milk jug. Very cool. Love this mold a lot. What do you think of it? Let me know in the comments, and here is your sneak peek for the next reveal.